No, that's not going to happen, I said firmly. She looked at me with a confused expression. What are you talking about now? She asked. You just assumed I'd sit here and listen to whatever excuse you had ready, I said. Her irritation was clear, and she snapped back. Where do you think you're going? Anywhere that's not here, I replied. Her face shifted to a pout, the kind of look a spoiled child gets when they don't get their way. What do you mean, anywhere but here? That's not something you need to worry about, I said coldly. You're acting childish, she shot back, rolling her eyes in a dramatic fashion. Honestly, Mark, grow up. It's the 21st century. People do things differently now. Oh, I'm sure you've changed, I replied coolly. But me? I'm still the same guy. Maybe a little grayer, but I'm still me. You, on the other hand? You're not the person you used to be, and that's not a compliment. She glanced down at herself, checking her appearance as if trying to prove something, still looking as polished as ever. She gave me a mock-hurt look. What's that supposed to mean? For starters, I said, you mentioned having dinner with someone. You admitted it was a guy, but somehow, his name is some big mystery. That's a new one. Oh, don't be ridiculous. She waved her hand dismissively, as if it was no big deal. I've told you I love you more than ever, and that hasn't changed. Well, I can't say the same, I confessed. Just an hour ago, I felt the same way, loved you more than anything. But in the last 60 minutes, that love has been fading fast. Right now, it feels more like disgust. Her face twisted into a mix of offense and defiance. I knew you'd act like this. So predictable and disappointing. Life's full of disappointments, I said with a shrug. Just yesterday, I was aiming for an 85 on the golf course, but I ended up with an 87 because of 3 awful putts on the 11th. For a second, her expression faltered. She hated being dismissed. Harper was all about being respected. She ran her own business, had a degree from a top school, and made almost as much as I did. People admired her. She expected me to do the same. I don't understand why you'd say something so unfair, she said, her voice tight, pride clearly hurt. I'm leaving, Mark, and this doesn't change anything. Sure, maybe it's selfish, but I justify it because I know it's what's best. You'll see eventually, and everything will be fine. You're completely wrong. You think nothing's changing, but everything already has, I replied. Her confusion was written all over her face. What's changed? You have, I said firmly. Your attitude, your priorities, everything about you is different now. You've convinced yourself of a twisted version of reality, and it's changing how I feel about you too. And trust me, there's more change coming. Her defiance flared again. Like what? Well, for one, have you thought about how Sophie and Maya will react when they find out their parents are splitting up? I asked. She sighed impatiently and waved the comment away as though it was insignificant. Splitting up? Stop being so dramatic. We're not getting divorced. And besides, our choices are none of their business. On one hand, I agree. Our relationship is ours to handle, I said. But what you're doing isn't just about us. It's you. And someone else. Oh, I see, she muttered, clearly annoyed. You're going to make this as hard as possible, aren't you? Mark, let's just drop this for now and work it out. No, I said firmly. We're not working anything out. I'm leaving. The problem is, I just don't believe you, I said calmly. Your actions today speak louder than any words you've said, and I'm not changing my mind. I'm done. Harper, go ahead with your date. I won't be here when you get back. Grabbing my jacket, wallet, and keys, I walked to the door. Wait, she called after me, the sharp click of her high heels echoing as she hurried behind me. But she couldn't catch up. I shut the door and got into my car. By the time she made it outside, I was already pulling away. I texted Maya. She lived just a few miles down the road. Netflix and chill? I sent, keeping it simple. Her reply came almost immediately. Want some company? I sent a heart emoji back. I'll bring popcorn. When I got to her place, her dog Rocky, a huge, drooling Dogue de Bordeaux, almost knocked me over at the door. The big guy barked happily and pressed against me, drooling all over my pants. Hey there, big guy, I said. laughing as I scratched his head. He snorted contentedly, wagging his whole body. Maya greeted me with a glass of wine and a bowl of popcorn already in hand. I took a sip and raised an eyebrow at her choice of drink. Not a word, she warned playfully. I like sweet wine, even if you don't. My house, my rules. I chuckled. Hey, I try to raise you right. You just went rogue. She laughed, tossing a blanket over my legs as she curled up beside me. So, what's Mom doing tonight? No idea, I replied honestly. Her brow furrowed. That's weird. Yeah, I said with a sigh, feeling the weight of the situation. She studied me, her gaze intense. Dad, what's really going on? You don't seem yourself. When I got home, she told me straight up that she was going on a date, I said, frustration creeping into my voice. When I questioned her about it, she tried to backpedal, saying she'd cancel so we could talk. But by that point, I'd had enough. I just walked out. Her face showed disbelief. Are you serious? Are you sure you heard her right? I wish I could say I misunderstood, but I didn't. This isn't some joke, I said, my voice heavy. What the hell is happening? She demanded, her voice rising. I was just at the house a couple of days ago, and everything seemed fine. I thought so too, I said, shaking my head. But I had no idea this was coming until tonight. Without missing a beat, Maya grabbed her phone. I'm calling her. I stayed silent, listening to Maya's part of the conversation. Her tone was sharp, with each question growing more biting. Where are you, Mom? Who are you with? Don't lie to me. Dad's right here, and you just lied to my face. What the hell is wrong with you? You lied to your own daughter. You know what? Don't call me. Don't come here. I'll talk to you when I'm ready. I reached out and pulled her close, and she buried her face in my chest, her shoulders shaking with quiet sobs. She lied to me, Dad, Maya whispered, her voice breaking. She told me she was with you. She flat out lied. I know, sweetheart, I murmured, stroking her hair. Maya pulled back slightly, her sadness turning into something sharper. How is this supposed to be okay? She demanded, her blue eyes blazing with anger. She's my mom, and she lied to me. She's out with some guy, and she tried to cover it up. What are you going to do about it, Dad? I sighed deeply, feeling more helpless than I ever had. Honestly, I don't know. I came here to clear my head, to make sense of all this. But now, I'm just as lost as you are. Maya wiped her eyes and grabbed a tissue, blowing her nose before sprawling out on the floor next to Rocky. The huge dog snorted sleepily as she flopped down beside him, burying her hands in his fur. After a few moments, she sat back up and leaned against me again. Rocky always knows how to calm me down, she said quietly, scratching his ears. And you always calm me down, kiddo, I said, trying to lighten the mood. Plus, let's be honest, you smell a lot better than he does. Maya let out a small laugh and wiped the last of her tears. True, he's got that funky dog smell going on. But seriously, Dad, talk to me. How did we end up here? What's going on with you and Mom? What's your plan? I hesitated, rubbing my hands together. I wish I had answers for you, sweetheart, but I don't. I'm just taking it one step at a time. After a long silence, Maya suddenly perked up. We should call Sophie, she said, grabbing her phone. Before I could stop her, she was already dialing. Hey, Sophie, where are you? Okay, get over here now. I'm serious. Just grab an Uber. See you soon. Exactly 20 minutes later, Sophie burst through the door, greeted enthusiastically by Rocky, who almost knocked her over with his excitement. She patted his head before sitting next to Maya on the couch. What's going on? Sophie asked, her face full of concern. I was at a party, so this better be important. Maya raised an eyebrow. Are you drunk? Sophie grinned sheepishly. I had a couple margaritas and a cocktail, so maybe just a little. Maya rolled her eyes, then looked at me. Go make her some coffee, Dad. She needs to sober up for this. I got up and brewed a pot of coffee, and by the time Sophie had downed 2 cups, she was clear-headed and ready to listen. Maya didn't hold back, telling her everything that had happened. With every word, Sophie's expression grew darker. Daddy, there's got to be more to this, she said, her voice steady but serious. Are you sure you're not leaving anything out? Have you two been fighting? Any issues in the bedroom? I let out a tired laugh. No more than usual. We bicker sometimes, but nothing out of the ordinary. Mostly about you two, if I'm being honest. I nudged Maya playfully, and she swatted at my arm. And no, as far as I know, there haven't been any problems in the bedroom. If there were, your mom hasn't said a word. Sophie frowned, thinking it over. I think you need to talk to her, Dad. Maya and I can try to help, but this has to start with you. Why didn't you stay and talk it out? I probably should have, I admitted, running a hand through my hair. But the way she told me about that date, it felt so cold, like it didn't even matter. I couldn't stay. Maya squeezed my hand, her voice softer now. I get it, Dad, but Sophie's right. We need to confront her and figure out what she's thinking. Can you talk to her without blowing up? I don't know, I said honestly. I need to clear my head first. I think I'll head to the lake house, try to relax, maybe sleep on it. I'll come with you, Maya said without hesitation. Let me grab a bag and some stuff for Rocky. Before we left, Sophie hugged us both. When we arrived, we let Rocky run along the water, splashing in the shallows and chasing frogs. Maya stayed close, her small hand still gripping mine. As the sun dipped below the horizon, we headed inside. I glanced at her. Mojito? Her face lit up with a smile. Absolutely. I whipped up 2 strong mojitos while Maya got a fire going in the fireplace. We settled on the couch, sipping our drinks and sharing a cigarette, letting the conversation drift from deep reflections to light-hearted nonsense. What's on your mind, Dad? She asked after a while, breaking the comfortable silence. I'm running through my options, I admitted. But everything depends on what your mom decides. Honestly, Maya, this is a mess. She might come back tomorrow, say it was a huge mistake, and want to fix things. Then what? Couples therapy? Maya chuckled bitterly, shaking her head. Therapy might be too ambitious. Maybe we should try a magic wand instead. She grew serious again. But really, what if she doesn't backtrack? What if she goes through with this? Then I guess we'll end up in court, I said, the words bitter on my tongue. But I can't imagine that's what she wants. Why would she throw everything away like this? I don't know, Dad. I dozed off while scrolling through videos on my phone and woke up the next morning feeling, if not rested, at least functional. I dressed quickly and took Rocky outside, letting him roam the bushes and sniff around for nearly an hour before we headed back. When I walked inside, Maya was already up, rummaging through the kitchen. Dad, do we have any food here? Not really, I admitted. We didn't stock up before coming. She shrugged. That's fine. You can take me out for breakfast. I'm craving French toast from Gay's. Sounds good to me, I said. We left Rocky napping on his bed and headed to Gay's, where we indulged in thick slices of French toast, endless coffee, and a conversation that bounced between possible reasons for Harper's behavior and lighter topics like school, Rocky's antics, and Maya's internship. By the time we were done, we were both tired of analyzing the situation and decided to head back to her place. After dropping Maya off, I took a long walk back to the lake house and settled onto the porch glider, watching the boats glide across the water. The loneliness hit me hard. I missed Harper. Not just the person, but the simple moments we used to share, the easy companionship that had been ours for years. Hoping to clear my head, I took the boat out and fished among the cedar thickets, reeling in 6 decent crappies. After cleaning them, I paired them with some frozen fries and ended up with a surprisingly satisfying meal. Later, when I turned my phone back on, I saw text from both Maya and Sophie asking me to come over. I drove to Maya's place and found them in the kitchen, mid-pizza. Maya handed me a beer, and we sat at the bar while they ate. Well, I talked to Mom, Maya began, her tone cautious. Me too, Sophie added, her expression grim. And you're not going to like what we found out. Maya took a deep breath before continuing. She told me she's unhappy, not with you, but with her life. She says it feels dull, like something's missing. Apparently, some guy at work has been hitting on her, and she likes the attention. She said it makes her feel attractive again, desired. She told me she wants to explore dating, and even said you could date too if you wanted. I stared at her, struggling to process the words. Sophie, is that really what she told you? Pretty much, she confirmed. Be patient, Sophie said quietly. Love her. Give her time to figure it out. She loves you, Dad. She's just going through something. Maybe it's a midlife crisis. Maya's anger flared. This isn't just a midlife thing, Sophie. She went out with another man. Let's not pretend this is normal behavior. What do you want, then? Sophie challenged. Divorce her? Lock her in the house? Divorce is inevitable, and I have made that decision, I said firmly. No, it's not. Sophie argued, her voice rising. Dad, don't throw away everything you've built with her over this. You're soulmates, you know that. Then maybe you should remind her of that, Maya retorted. You're acting like Dad needs to hold the family together while she runs around doing whatever she wants. Mom caused this, not Dad. I'm not taking her side. Sophie snapped. You sure about that? Because it sounds like you're making excuses for her, Maya shot back. Mom betrayed Dad. She's wrong, and if you can't see that, you're as blind as she is. Let's slow down, I interjected, pulling them both into an awkward hug. Maya leaned into me, but Sophie pulled away, grabbed her bag, and stormed out. God, I'm so mad at her right now, Maya muttered. I'm sorry, Dad, but that was ridiculous. I sighed, the weight of everything crushing me. It wasn't entirely her fault. This is your mom's doing, Maya. You and Sophie shouldn't be caught in the middle of this mess. Maya hugged me tightly. I trust you, Dad. Just promise to keep me close, okay? I always will, I said, holding her. But I knew the time had come to face Harper. When I pulled into the garage and saw her car parked there, my heart sank. I sat in the car for a moment, forcing myself to steady my nerves before heading inside. Hi, I said, keeping my tone neutral. I'm glad you came back, she replied. Harper, I'm not okay, I said bluntly, cutting straight to the heart of it. Her expression turned thoughtful. I know, she said softly. We sat on the couch, with an unusual distance between us, about a foot apart. Normally, Harper liked to sit close, and the tension in the air was thick. I want to apologize, Mark, she began, her voice steady. I know I handled this wrong. Very wrong. I raised a hand to stop her. If you think the problem is just about how you handled it, we're not going to get anywhere. She looked at me, confused. I'm not following. I leaned forward. It's not about how you told me, Harper. The issue is that you even considered going on a date with someone else in the first place. That's the real problem. Do you get that? I understand what you're saying, she replied slowly, but I don't think you fully understand what I mean. All right, I said, folding my arms. Explain it to me. She hesitated before continuing. When I say I went about this wrong, I mean I should have taken the time to explain my intentions better. Maybe if I had, it wouldn't feel so intolerable for you. I raised an eyebrow. Harper, you'd need a magic wand to make this tolerable. Did you discover any magical powers recently? A faint smile crossed her lips. Not exactly magic, but close. Go ahead then, I said, gesturing for her to continue. She sighed, settling back on the couch. Think about it, Mark. How old are we now? I'm 47, and you're basically ancient at 50. I chuckled, despite myself. Yeah, I feel every one of those years. Not physically, though, she added. Honestly, we're in the best shape we've been in for years. But emotionally, mentally, that's where things feel different. Do you remember how we felt when we were 25? I nodded. Yeah, I remember. So do I, she said, her voice softening. Back then, everything felt alive. The world seemed limitless. Each day brought something exciting. It felt like we were always discovering love, life, and each other. Do you remember that feeling? Yes, I replied, meeting her gaze. I remember. She sighed again. Now, think about our lives today. Sundays come, and it's the same routine. We either sleep in, go to church, maybe make love, cook dinner, watch a movie or soccer. It's the same thing, over and over. You're not wrong, I admitted. Then Monday rolls around, and it's work, home, dinner, bed, and repeat. The days blur into weeks, the weeks into years, and suddenly we've been doing the same thing for decades. Don't you feel like we're running on autopilot? I get what you're saying, I said, nodding. But here's the difference. I like our routine. I enjoy it because it's ours. We've built it together. And if it wasn't working, we'd find something new. But we'd do it together. She looked at me, her expression distant. I love what we've built too. But I also want something more. Something that brings back that sense of surprise, that feeling of being alive. I want us to keep growing and trying new things. I hear you, I said carefully. But what I don't understand is why you think we can't do those things together. Why bring in other people? I think we can explore together, she said hesitantly. But when I brought up the date, I thought, maybe we could do it separately. You could try it too, if you wanted. I stared at her, stunned. Harper, when I think of together, I think of just the two of us. Once you bring in a third person, it's not together anymore. It's something else entirely. Do you understand that? She leaned back, folding her arms. Mark, when was the last time you spent an evening alone with a woman who wasn't me? If we're not counting our daughters or family, it was probably 6 months ago. Remember when we went to Kansas City with Emily to meet those telecom reps? She nodded. And did you feel anything with Emily? Any tension? No, I said firmly. Emily's beautiful, sure, but she's a colleague. I'm married to you, Harper. We don't flirt. There's nothing there. But if you took her out to dinner, Harper pressed, went dancing, held her close, wouldn't it stir something in you? Wouldn't that be exciting? Maybe that's why I don't do it, I replied evenly. And why not? She asked, tone probing. Because I'm married to you, Harper. I don't put myself in situations where temptation even has a chance to arise. She studied me, her eyes narrowing. What if I told you I was okay with it? It wouldn't matter, I said firmly. It wouldn't feel right for me. She sighed, frustration flickering across her face. 10 years ago, I wouldn't have brought this up. But now, I feel like I'm mature enough to handle it. And I think you should be, too. I shook my head. That's the problem, Harper. This isn't what I signed up for. When we got married, we promised to be faithful to each other. If you want to break that promise, it's your choice. But I've got my own decisions to make, and this isn't right for me. I don't want to leave you, she said, her voice pleading. I just want more freedom. Some adventure, some spontaneity. But I want it with you. You're going to go through with this no matter how I feel, aren't you? I asked, my voice low. She hesitated, looking away. I don't know, Mark. I think I might. I felt my chest tighten. And that's what hurts the most, Harper. The fact that you've clearly thought this through, planned it out, and can talk about it so calmly. It tells me you've been hiding things for a while. What else haven't you told me? And what about Friday night? I'm sorry about Friday, she said softly. I shouldn't have done that. I was just angry because you walked out instead of staying to talk. That's nonsense, Harper, I said sharply. You planned this before Friday. You were going to go through with it and lie to me about it. You lied to Maya too. You've gotten very good at lying. She flinched. I told you I'd cancel if we could talk. And yet, here we are, I replied, my voice cold. That's just more excuses, Harper, I said flatly, my voice resolute. This isn't about finding the right way to frame it. It's about what you did, what you plan to do, and what you still want to do. I can't control your choices, but I can control mine. I'm packing my things and leaving you to figure out whatever it is you need. Her face fell, her voice cracking as she protested. What the hell, Mark? That's not what I want. It doesn't matter what you want anymore, I said, exhaustion lining my voice. What matters is that you wanted something more than me. Right now, I don't trust you. You've basically told me I'm boring and not enough for you. Even if nothing happens, I know how you feel about me now. And that's something I can't ignore. I went downstairs to grab my suitcase, quickly packing clothes and essentials for a week. Harper trailed behind me, her words spilling out in frantic bursts, begging me to reconsider. But I didn't listen. Once my bags were packed, I carried them out to the truck. She tried to follow me, but I locked the door before she could get outside. I loved her. God, I still loved her. But it felt like half of me had been ripped away, leaving an emptiness where trust used to be. I turned on a podcast, desperate to drown out the noise in my head. But by the time I reached the house, I couldn't remember a single word of it. Inside, I unpacked in a daze, feeling utterly drained. After about an hour, my phone buzzed. It was Sophie. "Hey, sweetheart," I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. "Where are you, Daddy?" she asked, concern evident in her tone. "I'm at the lake," I replied. "Where are you?" "I'm at your house," she said quietly, the tension in her voice unmistakable. "Mom called me and asked me to come over." "I'm glad you're there with your mom," I said. "Dad, she's a wreck," Sophie said, frustration seeping into her words. "You should be here, not me." "I know, Sophie, but it's not that simple," I said carefully. Her voice softened. "I'm so sorry you're going through this, Daddy. I know it's hard on you too. I love you." "I love you too, sweetheart," I replied. "Try to get some rest, okay?" After ending the call, I pulled myself together enough to call Maya back. "Hey, honey, how are you holding up?" I asked. "Daddy, are you okay?" she countered. "I will be," I said, keeping my voice calm. "What about you?" "I'm managing," she said. "Are you still at the lake?" "I am," I confirmed. "Do you want some company? I can pack a bag and come out." "Of course," I said. "You're always welcome here." "Great. I'll be there in an hour," she said, her voice lighter. By the time Maya arrived, I was in the kitchen, prepping some food. The sliding door creaked open, and the sound of Rocky's claws clicking on the floor filled the room. He immediately made a beeline for the counter, sniffing the food, and I couldn't help but laugh. I knelt down, giving him a scratch behind the ears before tossing him a few trimmings from the pork chops. Maya came up behind me and wrapped her arms around my waist, hugging me tightly. I dried my hands and hugged her back, holding her just a little longer than usual. "Smells good," she said, smiling up at me. I couldn't help but smile at her. In the middle of everything, her presence was an anchor, a reminder that, no matter what else fell apart, she was there, solid and steady. The food was amazing, and we dove in, savoring every bite. "So," I began cautiously, "how did things go with your mom?" Maya's expression darkened, her fork halting mid-air. "Not great," she admitted. She gave a lot of reasons, but it all boiled down to her being bored and wanting to relive the excitement of feeling young again. I sighed, setting my glass down. "All right, let me ask you something. If you were looking at this as a professional, not as her daughter, what would you say is going on with her?" Maya leaned back, considering the question. "Dad, I wouldn't treat a family member. It's unethical. But if someone came to me with this story as a stranger, I'd probably say they're dealing with depression and a big life transition. People throw around the term midlife crisis, but that's not an official diagnosis, you know?" "I didn't realize that," I said, surprised. "I thought it was an actual thing." "It's more of a pop culture term," she explained. "In reality, it's just a period of reckoning. People start facing their own mortality, realizing their time isn't infinite, and some get stuck in a spiral of depression and impulsive choices, trying to feel alive again." I smiled at her. "You've become so smart, you know that?" She grinned. Sophie came out to the lake Tuesday evening, bringing some tension along with her. Maya whipped up a potato salad while I grilled hamburgers, and we ate together on the porch, enjoying the crisp night air. "Dad, Mom's an absolute wreck," Sophie said, her voice filled with worry. "Yeah," I replied, keeping my tone even. "Sounds about the same as when I left." "What are you going to do?" she asked, her eyes searching mine. "She says she wants you to come back. She told me she understands the damage she's caused and that she'll forget all of this if you just come home." I sighed, taking a sip of my drink. "I'm sure she's sorry in her own way." Maya leaned in. "What do you mean, in her own way?" I set my glass down and took a deep breath. "It's hard to explain, but I'll try. Would you two like a drink first?" "What VE you got?" Sophie asked. "Stuff for Palomas," I offered, heading inside to mix them. The time in the kitchen gave me a moment to gather my thoughts. By the time I returned, we were all settled with our drinks, ready for the inevitable conversation. "So, Sophie, are you still dating that, what's his name?" Maya teased, trying to lighten the mood. Sophie laughed. "No, he turned out to be a total jerk. But I met someone new about a month ago. His name's Matthew." I saw an opportunity to steer the conversation. All right, girls, suppose Matthew told you that he thought you were boring, Sophie. How would that make you feel? Not great, she admitted, wrinkling her nose. But I'm not boring. No, you're not, I agreed. But if that's how he feels, could you really argue with it? She frowned. I'm not sure what you mean. Well, think about it like this, I explained. Maya doesn't like raisins, and you hate coconut. Those are your personal preferences. No one can convince you to feel differently, right? Right? Maya said slowly, catching on. So, you're saying Mom feels that way about you? Not in those exact words, I said. But she did mention that she misses the spark, the excitement we had when we were younger. She feels like we're stuck in a rut, doing the same things over and over. And she wants to bring some of that thrill back. Maya's brow furrowed. Do you feel the same way? Maybe a little, I admitted. I know we're not 25 anymore, but I like what we have. If I didn't, I'd be doing something else. I don't see anything wrong with that, Sophie said. So, what's the issue? The issue, I said carefully, is that she doesn't want to do those things with me. She wants to do them with other men. She likes the attention, the feeling of being desired, and she's open to dating, and whatever comes after. And let's be honest, I continued. Do you really think she decided this on a whim last Friday and lined up a date that same night? No, Maya said quietly. She's been thinking about this for a while. Exactly, I said. And now, we're all caught in the fallout. In the weeks that followed, Maya kept her distance from Harper, only mentioning her when necessary. Sophie gave occasional updates, saying Harper was resistant to individual therapy but willing to consider couples counseling. When Maya asked my opinion, I was skeptical. Couples counseling won't fix this if she doesn't address the real issue, Maya said one evening. Are you ready for something like that? No, I replied. I'm not interested in seeing other women, and I'm definitely not interested in sharing her with other men. Are you sure, Dad? Sophie chimed in during a visit. Maybe a break from marriage would help. You could meet someone new, have fun, and see where it goes. I snorted. And then what? What happens the next time she gets bored? I'm not playing that game. 2 months passed without meaningful change, and I finally decided enough was enough. I filed for divorce. Harper called immediately. Mark, this has gone too far. Are you actually divorcing me? On what grounds? It's a no-fault divorce, I replied calmly. I don't need grounds. What are you going to tell people? She asked sharply. That we had a disagreement, and you left? I'm not telling anyone anything, I said. It's not their business. Well, I'll be there, she said. We need to talk before this goes any further. Dinner on Friday? Fine, I agreed. When Friday came, she walked into the lake house unannounced, her presence instantly reigniting old emotions. She looked beautiful, the same woman I'd loved for so many years. But the tension between us was palpable. She tossed her purse on a chair and approached, clearly expecting a hug or kiss. I gave her a brief hug, unable to offer more. What can I do to help? She asked softly. Everything's ready, I replied, nodding toward the table. You can set it. We sat down to dinner, poured some wine, and she started talking. I don't want a divorce, Mark, she began. That's what I don't understand, I replied, meeting her gaze. Why not? Because I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Then why? I asked, my voice quiet but firm. Why wasn't what we had enough for you? I never said I wasn't happy, Harper argued, her tone defensive. Maybe you used the wrong word, I replied, leaning forward slightly. But don't play word games with me, Harper. You've made it painfully clear that you're not satisfied. Then you're not hearing me, she insisted. I am satisfied. I just wanted to add something new, something that could make our lives even better. I raised an eyebrow. Okay, but you wanted to add that something new by dating other men. That makes me profoundly uncomfortable. The simplest solution here is for us to get divorced. Then you can date all the men you want without me standing in your way. That's not fair, she shot back, her voice rising. Why does it matter if I date other men, as long as it doesn't change my love for you? The only difference is I wouldn't be married to you while I do it. Exactly, I said, my tone sharp. And that means I can move on with my life, Maybe even meet someone who doesn't feel the need to date other people. You'd get your freedom, and I'd get mine. That's not what I want, she said, her voice trembling with frustration. Why should it be a choice between you and random dates with other men? If I have to choose, I'd rather be married to you. I get that, Harper. The girls understand that too. But here's the problem. I don't want to be married to someone who even wants to date other men, whether you follow through or not. Dinner ended with a heavy sense of finality, and we moved to the couch. She looked at me, a mix of desperation and sadness in her eyes. So that's it? She asked, her voice shaky. Even though I love you, even though I've given up the idea and chosen you, you still don't want to stay married to me? Yes, Harper, I said quietly. That's exactly it. Look at me, Mark, she said, moving closer. Before I could react, she was in my lap, kissing me with a passion I hadn't felt in years. For a moment, I let myself get swept up in the warmth and familiarity of it. But reality hit hard, and I stopped responding. She kept kissing me, but when she noticed my lack of enthusiasm, she slowed, eventually pulling away. What's wrong? She asked, confusion clouding her face. I looked her straight in the eyes. Harper, have you met someone else? Her expression faltered, and the hesitation in her eyes told me everything I needed to know. She took a deep breath, then whispered, Yes, Mark, I have. My stomach tightened, but I forced myself to stay calm. Are you planning to go on a date with him? Eventually, probably, she admitted, not meeting my eyes. Well, I said, leaning back, I like being married, Harper. I don't find it boring. She sighed, the weight of the moment seeming to crush her. Could I be one of the women you date? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Maybe, I replied honestly, but I don't think I can do that. I don't feel the same way about you anymore. Maybe, with time, I'll stop being angry about how this played out. Maybe I'll stop thinking about the other guys you've been with. But don't hold your breath. Her face crumpled, and she grabbed her purse, walking quickly toward the door. Let me know if you change your mind, she said before slipping out. The divorce process moved along, but then her attorney blindsided me with a request for counseling. I didn't see it coming. What the hell is this? I asked my lawyer. The judge has to order it if one of you requests it, he explained. I'm not doing it, I said firmly. This is none of the court's or the state's business. He could hold you in contempt if you refuse, my lawyer warned. Then figure it out, I snapped. I can't, he replied helplessly. It's the law. I sat in silence, considering my options. What if we withdraw the petition? Would he still be able to order it? My lawyer blinked in surprise. No, I don't think so. Is that what you want? Yes. Do it, I said decisively. When we returned to court, the decision took everyone by surprise, especially Harper, who looked smugly triumphant. After the proceedings adjourned, I approached her. I dropped the suit, I said flatly, because I refuse to be forced into something I don't want. But until you end this nonsense, I'm cutting you off completely. Don't call me, don't write, don't send messages. If that's how you want it, you'll never hear from me again. Her mouth opened to protest, but I didn't wait to hear it. I turned and walked away. For the next 2 months, Harper tried every trick to reach me. She used Sophie as a go-between, which only stirred up more tension between Sophie and Maya. She showed up at the lake house 3 times, but I'd already changed the locks. When she came to my workplace, I had security escort her out. Eventually, she gave up and told Sophie she was done with counseling. That was all I needed to proceed with the divorce. This time, it was uncontested. The judge finalized it without fanfare, and there was no longer any requirement for counseling. Harper kept the house in town, and I got the lake house, just as I'd wanted. We divided our assets cleanly, businesses, property, pensions, with no spousal support owed by either of us. The process was tedious but straightforward. After the divorce, I threw myself into new ventures, buying small businesses and quickly generating enough income to retire. My days were filled with fishing, learning to water ski, and spending summers on the boat with the girls. By October, I was ready for a change and applied for a visa to live in Mexico. I winterized the lake house, traded in my Chevy for a diesel F-350, bought a luxury camper, hooked up my boat, and drove south. I settled at Lake Baraka in Nayarit, where I planned to stay for 6 months. The girls were uneasy about my decision at first, but they warmed up when I sent plane tickets to Guadalajara and promised plenty of beach time. In my first week, I found a 5-acre property near the lake, bought it, and started setting up utilities. By the end of the month, I was a local. On my second fishing trip, I reeled in a 14-pound bass and was hooked, literally and figuratively. Sophie visited in January, and we spent time exploring Puerto Vallarta and lounging by the ocean. On our last day, as we watched the waves, she turned to me. "You're not coming back, are you, Daddy?" she asked quietly. "I haven't decided," I said, "but I'm leaning towards staying. The only reason I'd come back is for you girls. I'll visit you whenever you want, though." She hesitated. "What about Mom?" I grimaced. "How's she doing?" "She works a lot," Sophie said. "I think she regrets everything." "How can you tell?" "She doesn't say it outright, but she's not herself anymore. She seems sad. Dating hasn't been what she thought it would be." I squeezed her hand. "I'm sorry to hear that, but I'd rather not talk about her, okay?" She nodded, giving me a sad smile. "I just wanted to understand." "I know," I said, my voice soft. In February, Maya flew down and stayed with me in the camper. We spent 3 days soaking up the sun before heading to my property. When she saw it, her eyes widened. "This place is incredible, Daddy. You really live here?" she asked. "I do," I said with a smile. "It's a lucky man's life." She gave me a serious look. "You've built a beautiful life. But what comes next?" "Whatever I want," I said with a grin. And for the first time in years, I truly felt free. "We listen to people's concerns," Maya said with a grin. I couldn't help but laugh. "So, like bartenders?" She joined in, her laughter filling the room. "Exactly. Maybe I'm more of a bartender than a psychologist." She stayed for 2 wonderful weeks, and when she finally flew back, the house felt unbearably empty. I missed her more than I expected, but eventually, I found my rhythm again. 6 months later, I got a call from her. "Dad, I need a favor," she began, her tone light. "If I can help, you know I will," I said. "I need a loan," she admitted. "Okay," I replied cautiously. "Are we talking a big loan, or just a little cash to tide you over?" "It's a big one," she confessed. Curiosity piqued, I asked, "What's it for?" "Don't you trust me?" she teased, laughing softly. "Of course I trust you," I said. "But I'm your dad. I have the right to be nosy." All right. I want to buy a cabin," she said, her excitement bubbling through her voice. "That's interesting. Is it an existing property? Does it generate income? Can I look it up online?" I asked, interested. "Yes and yes," she said, "but I'd rather you visit it." "Where is it?" I asked, trying to keep my excitement in check. "How far from me?" "About 10 miles," she said, clearly holding back laughter. "It's on Lake Baraka." "You're kidding," I said, laughing aloud. "You're pulling my leg, aren't you?" "Nope," she replied, laughing with me. "I've already gone over the financials with an accountant. It's profitable, and it even has a bar. So now I can listen to people's problems, just like you said bartenders do." I couldn't help but join her laughter. "Oh my God, honey, this sounds like a dream come true. So, how much are you asking for?" When she shared the number, my eyebrows shot up. "Wow, Maya, you're going all in. Go big or go home, right?" she said with a grin. "Don't you have enough saved up?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Not quite enough to avoid borrowing," she admitted. "I'd like to pay you back with interest once I show steady profits and can get traditional financing. Right now, I'm like someone with no credit." I nodded, already convinced. "This is incredible, Maya. I can't believe you're doing this. I'll check it out, and you'll need to visit too." 3 weeks later, she arrived, and we went to see the property together. It was a cozy, well-maintained cabin that catered primarily to U.S. fishermen. The place had a solid business model, and it looked like a great investment. 6 months later, Maya officially became the owner. She ran the business with the same dedication and skill I'd seen in her all her life. Rocky quickly became the bar's unofficial mascot, adored and spoiled by the patrons. I spent plenty of time with Maya, often hanging around the bar, watching her work her magic with customers. The property had a first-rate restaurant that was a favorite among locals and visitors alike. One busy Friday night, the chef approached me in the kitchen where I had my usual table. "Mr. Green, would you mind some company tonight?" he asked. I hesitated but nodded. "Sure, why not?" He returned with a woman who left me momentarily speechless. She was stunning. Her elegant yellow dress fell just below her knees, one shoulder bare, with a slit that revealed a perfectly toned leg as she walked. Her glossy black curls, streaked with silver, framed a striking heart-shaped face with luminous dark eyes, high cheekbones, and a delicate chin. The chef pulled out a chair for her, and she sat gracefully. "Mr. Green, this is Miss Bradshaw," he said. "She's a friend of the house." I stood and offered my hand. "Please call me Mark." "No, mister. At dinner." She laughed softly, a low, melodic sound that I instantly wanted to hear again. "You can call me Melanie," she said, her accent soft but her English flawless. Her voice had a rich, velvety quality that immediately put me at ease. As the server poured her a glass of sangria, I struggled to find words. "It's, pretty packed tonight," I managed. "Lucky they keep this table open." Melanie smiled, a hint of amusement in her eyes. "Yes, it's very busy. I usually sit at the bar, but tonight, I wanted to avoid someone there I'd rather not see." "Well," I said, attempting a bit of charm, "you're safe here with me. Keeping obnoxious guests away from beautiful ladies is my specialty." Her cheeks flushed a soft peach, and she laughed. "I'm glad to have such a gallant protector." "Do you come here often?" I asked, desperate to keep the conversation flowing. "Yes," she said. "As Gabriel mentioned, your daughter owns the place. I can cook, but I prefer not to, so I come here instead." She glanced at me warmly. "Your daughter is wonderful. We're becoming good friends." "Really?" I said, genuinely pleased. "I'm glad to hear that. Do you live nearby?" "Yes," she nodded. "I have a house on the Siloa River, though I also keep a home in Los Machos." "And you?" "I'm just a few miles away," I said. "I've got some land, a camper, and a boat. I like the freedom to move whenever I want." She tilted her head, intrigued. "So, you're new here, like Maya?" "I moved here about a year ago," I explained. "I came first, and Maya followed after visiting and falling in love with the place." "What brought you here?" she asked, her tone genuinely curious. "Fishing mostly," I replied. "But I stayed for the peace and freedom. I sold my business back in the States and decided it was time to live life differently." She hesitated, then asked, "What kind of business did you run, if you don't mind me asking?" I chuckled. "No need to apologize. I made industrial parts for companies like Caterpillar and John Deere." Her eyes lit up with admiration. "So, a bit of an industrial magnate?" she teased. "Hardly," I said with a laugh. "But I did well enough to retire early." She looked at me thoughtfully. "You're so young to be retired." "Lucky, I guess. If you consider 50 young, that is." "I could retire," she mused, "but I feel like I still have things to accomplish." "Such as?" I asked, intrigued by her determination. She leaned in, her eyes sparkling mischievously. "I'm a smuggler," she said with a playful smile. I blinked, caught off guard, until she laughed and waved a hand. No, I'm kidding. I own a pharmaceutical company. We supply medications to the Mexican Social Security Institute." "Wow," I said, impressed. "That's no small feat." "Thank you," she said with a smile. "I love what I do, but sometimes I wonder what it would be like to slow down." "Something tells me you'd be good at whatever pace you choose," I said, genuinely meaning it. Our conversation flowed effortlessly from there, and I found myself wishing the night wouldn't end. "That's why I spend time in Los Machos," Melanie explained, her smile lingering as she watched me. "But maybe I should retire and take up the wandering life. What do you say? Loosen up, have a few adventures?" I laughed, shaking my head. "A bit of a free spirit, huh?" Her smile widened. "I do try." "Your English is remarkable," I said, genuinely impressed. "But I'm guessing your Spanish is even better." She chuckled, and we effortlessly switched to Spanish. Her fluency and eloquence in both languages only added to her charm. "I'd like to know more about you, Melanie," I said, my curiosity growing. "What's your story?" She tilted her head thoughtfully, her dark eyes studying me. "Curious just because I'm friends with your daughter?" "Exactly," I replied with a grin. "Purely for Maya's sake." She laughed warmly, her voice like music. "Well, I own quite a bit of land along the river. I keep horses, but mostly cattle." "What breed?" I asked, genuinely intrigued. "Registered gay cattle," she replied. "I can't say I've met any," I teased, earning another laugh. "Well," she said, still giggling, "I'll have to introduce you to a few. You'll see they're excellent company." I laughed along with her, caught up in the moment. "Melanie, you're a very funny woman," I said, completely captivated. "I hope you don't mind me asking," I added cautiously, "but does Mr. Bradshaw exist?" Her laughter faded, and she grew pensive. "Not anymore," she said softly. "He died 11 years ago in a petrochemical plant explosion." I froze, feeling a pang of regret for bringing up such a painful subject. "Melanie, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to." She held up a hand to stop me. "It's all right, Mark. Time has eased the pain. Now, I choose to remember the good times." I nodded, my voice gentle. "The memories are what matter. The pain fades, but those stay with us." She gave me a thoughtful look. "What about you? Maya obviously has a mother." "Yes," I said, pulling out my phone to show her a picture. "And another daughter, Sophie. She's 3 years older than Maya." Melanie's smile widened as she admired the picture. "She's beautiful. Does she live here?" "No, she's in the States with her mom. My ex-wife and I divorced about 2 years ago." She tilted her head, her expression kind. "Is that still difficult for you?" I shrugged, feeling oddly at ease. It was at first, but less so now. We just wanted different things. She wanted an open marriage, new experiences, other relationships. I didn't. Her eyes softened with understanding. "I'm sorry to hear that, Mark." "That's life," I said with a shrug. "Melanie, would you let me take you to dinner sometime? Maybe next weekend?" Her face lit up with a smile. "I'd love that, but I have to go to Los Machos the day after tomorrow. I won't be back until Tuesday. How about the Friday after that?" "Perfect," I said, pulling out my phone. "Can I get your number? I'll make a reservation and send you the details." She handed me her phone, and I saved her contact. "When you pick me up," she teased, "maybe I'll introduce you to a few cattle." We both laughed, and I walked her to her car, a sleek silver BMW Z4. "Nice ride," I said, admiring it as I opened the door for her. She leaned over and kissed me lightly on the cheek, her touch sending a thrill through me. "You were a wonderful dinner companion, Mark. Thank you for letting me join you." "Believe me, Melanie, the pleasure was all mine," I said sincerely. "I don't know how I'll manage to wait until our dinner date to see you again." "You have my number now," she said with a soft smile. "Call me anytime. Late afternoons are best." "I'll take you up on that," I promised, closing her door and watching as she drove away, feeling as though I were in a dream. Back at Maya's place, I knocked on the door to say goodnight. She opened it, practically bouncing with excitement. "Well, did you like her? Isn't she amazing? Did you ask her out?" she asked, her words tumbling out. I gave her a mock-serious look. "You set me up, didn't you?" She giggled, her grin mischievous. "Guilty as charged. Good move, huh?" "Jesus, Maya, how did you get her to go along with it?" "She loves me," Maya said matter-of-factly. "I told her about you, and she thought you two would be perfect together." "Well, I did ask her out. She's going away for a week, but we have dinner planned for next Friday. Now I just need a car that's a bit more date-appropriate." "You can borrow mine," Maya offered immediately. "Thanks, honey. That'll work for now, but I think I'll need to start car shopping soon." The next day, I sent Melanie a text. "I can see it now. 2 devious women conspiring against me." She replied with a series of smiley faces and hearts. "Resistance is futile." "My own daughter," I wrote back. Looking forward to our date. Each day that followed felt like an eternity. I hadn't felt this kind of anticipation in years. It was almost like being a teenager again, waiting for a first date. The irony of it all wasn't lost on me. Harper had been searching for that same thrill, and here I was, finding it in an entirely unexpected way. I couldn't help but wonder if Harper ever had. Melanie and I exchanged texts daily, and occasionally she'd call. Our conversations were effortless, shifting easily between Spanish and English as she shared details of her day. It felt natural, as if we'd known each other for far longer than a week. When she called to say she was back, I could hardly contain my excitement. I drove to Maya's to borrow her car, knowing the truck and camper weren't exactly ideal for a first date. Following Melanie's directions, I drove along a scenic, winding road by the river, lined with scattered houses. Eventually, I turned onto a paved path leading to a gated entrance with a numeric keypad and call button. I pressed it and waited, my heart pounding. Hola! Melanie's voice greeted me through the speaker, warm and melodic. Hola, it's Mark, I said, smiling despite myself. Her laugh was soft and inviting. I'm so glad you're here. I have a feeling you're going to be excellent company tonight. I'll see you in just a moment. The gate swung open, and I drove down a long, winding driveway. The scenery was stunning, but the further I went, the more I started to wonder if I was in the right place. Then, the house appeared in the distance. A sprawling mansion perched on a cliff, its architecture blending effortlessly with the natural beauty of the river below. The view was breathtaking. I rang the doorbell, and it was answered by a young girl, maybe 12 or 13. She was striking, her smile almost identical to Melanie's. Behind her, an older woman stood quietly, watching with interest. Good evening, Mr. Mark. I'm Isla, Melanie's daughter, the girl said, her English as perfect and polished as her mother's. Nice to meet you, Isla, I replied in Spanish, smiling warmly. You look so much like your mom. You're just as beautiful. Do you speak English? She blushed, much like Melanie had at dinner. Yes, I speak English, Spanish, and French. My French isn't as good, though. I bet you're amazing at all three, I said with a grin. I'd like to take your mom out for dinner. Are you okay with that? She gave me a playful once-over, her dark eyes sparkling. Well, you are, as they say, charming for a man your age. I laughed. You're quite the charmer yourself. And hey, I'm not that old. She giggled, her laughter eerily reminiscent of Melanie's. Okay, maybe I exaggerated. But seriously, you're Maya's dad, and I love her. So, you have my approval. Thank you, Isla, I said warmly. She took my hand and led me inside. The house's open design blended the living room, dining room, and kitchen into one seamless space, elegant yet inviting. This is Carla, she said, introducing the older woman, who nodded politely. Pleasure to meet you, I said, shaking her hand. Carla runs the house when my mom's away, Isla explained proudly. Would you like a drink while you wait for her? What do you recommend? I asked, playing along. Well, I usually go for lemonade, she said, grinning. But we also have juice and some adult options. Lemonade sounds perfect, I said with a wink. And please, call me Mark. All right, Mark, she said, her eyes twinkling. But you still sound kind of formal. I chuckled. You're quite the character, Isla. She giggled again. I just love to laugh. Let's take this lemonade to the back porch. Stay with your guest, Isla, Carla interjected kindly. I'll bring it to you. The back porch was incredible. A sprawling mahogany deck framed by vine-covered beams, with slow-turning leaf-shaped fans overhead. Glass doors revealed an unobstructed view of the river and the lush valley below. This place is amazing, I said, taking it all in. I love it here, Isla said as we sat in comfortable chairs. Let's have a real conversation. I couldn't help but smile. Her confidence was well beyond her years. You're very much your mother's daughter, I said, amused. I've only had one real conversation with your mom, I admitted. Somehow, you never came up. She doesn't mention me much, Isla said with a grin. She's probably afraid people will like me better than her. We both laughed as Carla appeared with a pitcher of lemonade. Isla and I thanked her in unison, which made Isla giggle again. Are you one of those people who can read minds? She teased. Absolutely, I said, playing along. That's why I carry tinfoil hats for everyone. Oh, I think we have a few lying around. Should I warn my mom? She asked, her eyes glinting with mischief. No need, I replied, smiling. Knowing her thoughts might help me figure out how to make her happy. Isla tilted her head thoughtfully. Good plan, Mark. It sounds like you've got this figured out. This is my first date in years, I admitted. I could use all the help I can get. Speaking of which, Isla, when do you think your mom will be ready? Mom likes to make an entrance, she said knowingly. Any moment now. Thanks for the heads up, Isla, came Melanie's voice from behind us. We turned to see her standing in the doorway, radiant in a simple yet elegant white linen dress. Tan platform sandals with straps winding up her calves and a wide-brimmed white hat completed the look, giving her a sophisticated charm. Isn't Mom beautiful, Mark? Isla asked with a grin. I cleared my throat, managing a smile. Yes, Melanie. You look stunning. Melanie smiled warmly. I see you've already met Isla. Yes, and it's been a pleasure, I said. Isla, you're delightful. I hope to see more of you. Finishing my lemonade, I walked over to Melanie. Somehow, you never mentioned having such an incredible daughter. I wanted her to be a surprise, Melanie replied, her eyes sparkling. I knew you'd adore her once you met. She's my world, Mark. I can see why, I said sincerely. Dinner was everything I'd hoped it would be. Melanie's conversation was captivating, and the food was exceptional. Afterward, we visited Salon Tampico, a vibrant spot alive with mariachi music, colorful decorations, and joyous energy. Melanie moved effortlessly on the dance floor, switching seamlessly between traditional Mexican dances, salsa, and tango. Holding her close during a slow dance felt surreal, like something out of a fantasy. Driving back to her house, the evening's events felt almost too perfect to be real. When we reached her door, she leaned in and kissed me, a soft, electric moment that left me breathless. Would you and Maya join Isla and me next Saturday? She asked, her fingers lightly brushing my cheek. I'd love to, I replied, my heart racing. On Tuesday, Sophie called me. Dad, when's a good time for me to catch up with you and Maya? She asked. How about tonight at 8? I suggested. I'll be at Maya's for dinner. Perfect, she said. Could you check with her and let me know? After confirming with Maya, I sent Sophie a quick message, and we settled in to wait. Sophie called at exactly 8. Dad, Maya, I can't stand living here without you too, she said, her voice emotional. I'm fed up with dating idiots, and my job is draining me. Plus, being around Mom is unbearable. I want to move there. Maya's excitement was palpable. That's amazing. Can you get a job here? I think so, Sophie said. I'm planning to buy the travel agency that handles bookings for the lake cabins, including Maya's. Wow, I said, impressed. You've really thought this through. Are you sure? Absolutely, she said, her voice wavering. I just wanted to make sure you were okay with it. Sophie, you're always welcome, I said, my voice soft. I love you, baby. I'll always want you close. I love you too, Daddy, she said, sounding relieved. We ended the call with plans to welcome Sophie soon. I couldn't believe how my life was changing, but for the first time in years, it felt like things were falling into place. As I lay in my camper later that night, my thoughts swirled around the day. Every moment had felt like a new chapter in a story I hadn't realized I was writing, one filled with happiness, laughter, and a sense of connection I hadn't felt in years. Maya was right. Things were falling into place. Between my growing bond with Melanie and Isla and Sophie's plan to move here, my life had reached a level of richness I hadn't thought possible. The next morning, I woke up early, preparing for the day ahead. I couldn't stop thinking about the upcoming dinner with Melanie and what Maya had said. She thinks you might be the one. That thought lingered, sending a warmth through me that was both exciting and a little terrifying. It wasn't just the idea of falling in love again. It was the realization that I already had. Later in the afternoon, I drove over to Melanie's house. When I arrived, the atmosphere was buzzing with energy. Isla ran out to greet me, pulling Maya along by the hand. Mark, Maya and I are going to decorate the gazebo, Isla announced, her excitement contagious. We need it to look amazing. Do you need me to help? I asked, smiling at her enthusiasm. Nope, Isla replied firmly, hands on her hips. This is our project. You and Mom just need to relax and not mess it up. Understood, I said, laughing. I'll try to stay out of the way. Inside, Melanie greeted me with a soft smile and a kiss on the cheek. Did you bring the famous pico de gallo? She asked. Of course, I replied, holding up the bowl. Enough to feed a small army. Perfect, she said, taking it from me. Let's put this on ice while we finish setting up. The afternoon flew by in a blur of activity. Melanie and I prepared food together in the kitchen, her presence as comforting as it was electrifying. Every brush of her hand against mine or shared glance sent sparks through me. Isla and Maya flitted in and out, carrying decorations, offering opinions, and making sure everything was just right. As the sun dipped low on the horizon, we all gathered in the gazebo. We feasted on tacos, my pico de gallo stealing the show once again. Conversation flowed effortlessly, with Maya and Isla stealing the spotlight with their playful banter. It was hard to believe we'd only been in each other's lives for a short time. It felt like we'd always been a family. After dinner, Melanie and I took a walk along the river while Maya and Isla stayed behind to clean up. The cool evening air was refreshing, and the sound of the water was soothing. We strolled in comfortable silence until Melanie stopped, turning to face me. Mark, she began, her voice soft but steady. I wasn't expecting this. Expecting what? I asked, my heart pounding. This, she said, gesturing between us. You. Us. I thought my life was full. I have Isla, my home, my work. But now, I can't imagine it without you. Her words hit me like a wave, and before I could think, I pulled her into my arms. Melanie, I feel the same way. I didn't know I could feel like this again. But you've brought something into my life I didn't even know was missing. She smiled, her eyes shining. So, what do we do now? We take it one day at a time, I said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. But I know one thing for certain. I don't want to take another step without you. She leaned in, and our lips met in a kiss that felt like a promise, a moment of clarity and connection that erased any lingering doubts. When we pulled back, her smile was radiant. Let's go back, she said, her hand slipping into mine. We have two wonderful girls waiting for us. That night, as we all sat around a fire pit under the stars, I felt a deep sense of peace. Isla and Maya roasted marshmallows, giggling over inside jokes, while Melanie leaned against my shoulder, her warmth a comforting anchor. I knew life would always have its challenges, but for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to face them. Maya's earlier words echoed in my mind, "Don't mess it up," and I knew I wouldn't. Melanie and Isla had become part of my world, and I wasn't going to let them go. With Sophie joining us soon, the future looked brighter than ever. As the fire crackled and the laughter continued, I found myself thinking about all the paths that had led me here. And for the first time, I felt truly grateful for every twist and turn. They'd all brought me to this moment, a moment I knew I'd treasure forever. Melanie sat up, her face glowing with a mix of love and vulnerability as she watched Isla and me. Maya and Sophie exchanged a knowing look, their smiles wide as they leaned against the headboard. "Well, Daddy?" Maya asked, her tone teasing yet supportive. "What's your answer?" I glanced down at Isla, her big, hopeful eyes locked on mine. Her words had hit me with such force, yet they felt as natural as breathing. I kissed her forehead softly, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. "Isla," I said, my voice steady despite the emotions swirling inside me, "if your mom will have me, I'd love nothing more than to make us a family. But I think this is a question for her too." I looked at Melanie, who had tears glistening in her eyes. She smiled, her hands pressed to her chest as though she were holding her heart in place. "Mark," she began, her voice thick with emotion, "there's nothing I'd love more than for us to be a family. You've already shown me the kind of man you are, the kind I want to share my life with." Her words filled the room, and I felt like I was walking on air. Isla's face lit up with excitement as she threw her arms around me. "You'll really marry her?" she asked, her voice bubbling with joy. "I will," I said, smiling at her. "If she says yes." "Yes," Melanie said immediately, her voice firm and unwavering. Yes, Mark, I will. The girls erupted into cheers, and Maya and Sophie practically tackled Melanie with hugs. Isla wriggled off my lap to join them, and suddenly the room was filled with laughter, tears, and overwhelming happiness. Later that morning, we sat around the breakfast cart, sharing pancakes, fruit, and coffee. The excitement in the air was palpable, and every glance between Melanie and me was charged with a new, deeper connection. Maya and Sophie peppered us with questions about wedding plans, while Isla proudly declared she wanted to help pick out flowers. Do you think we should have it here in Tulum? Sophie asked, her practical mind already ticking through possibilities. It's beautiful, and it would make for an incredible destination wedding. Melanie laughed, shaking her head. As tempting as that sounds, I think we'd be happier keeping it simple, somewhere close to home. Isla nodded enthusiastically. The river, she said. We could do it by the river. Maya clapped her hands together. That would be perfect, beautiful, and meaningful. I looked at Melanie, her face radiant as she imagined the possibilities. The river sounds perfect to me, I said. What do you think? I love it, she said softly, reaching for my hand. It feels like us. The rest of the trip was a whirlwind of joy and love. Back at the lake, life settled into a rhythm again. But now there was an added layer of joy and anticipation. Melanie and I started making plans for the wedding, keeping things simple yet meaningful. The girls were fully involved. Maya and Sophie took charge of decorations, while Isla made it her mission to design the perfect flower arrangements. The day of the wedding arrived faster than any of us expected. The ceremony took place by the river, under the canopy of a large oak tree draped in white flowers. Friends and family gathered, their faces glowing with happiness as Melanie walked down the makeshift aisle, Isla proudly holding her hand. Maya and Sophie stood by my side, their smiles mirroring the joy I felt in my heart. When Melanie reached me, her eyes locked onto mine, and everything else faded away. And as we stood there under the stars, the laughter of the day still echoing in my mind, I knew this was the life I'd been waiting for, the life I'd finally found.